Hey guys, Billy here, or Double Billy, if you will. I don't really have an intro yet, so I'm not sure. So here we are. This is my next off-meta build that I'm showcasing. I've decided now I'm kind of gonna combine my showcases and builds together because I feel like there's a lot more insight I can really give and talk a bit more about these off-meta, these quirky builds, if you will. So what I have been working on the past few weeks is a Ranger Paladin, which has been quite a surprisingly fun playthrough. So you're just using your basic attack and you have an aura on your right, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a pretty boring playthrough since it has such a lack of any skills. You don't have anything to utilize anywhere near like a bow is on. It's just your standard attack. But I really enjoyed the refreshing, kind of laid back, more withdrawn playstyle and just taking advantage of, nearly hit the mic there, just really shooting explosive arrows, and it was a lot of fun. So I think we'll show stats and skills, we'll go into gear, show a few alternates and try not to blabber on too long, and then we'll jump in and finish off some of the cow level which I was testing. So, stats, okay, there we are. So level 80, I got 109 into strength, I've got 165 into dexterity. You do not need as high of strength and dexterity. I have chosen to up certain pieces of my gear. I have upped my Kuko to a shadow bow. Definitely not needed. Your damage is coming from elemental sources such as your Dream and your Dragon for Holy Shock and Holy Fire, which we'll get into later. So there's no point really, unless you really want to up items such as the Kuko. So the dexterity for this is 188. I can't remember what it is for the standard Cedar bow base, but I think it's like below 100. So that's a lot of stats you can save there and pump into vitality. I have quite low at 938, but that's just what I wanted to do, to use my upped Kuko for the hell of it, I guess. And for energy, I got nothing in there. Just to show stats, I guess, I've got 60 increased attack speed, so I've got 20 in my Kuko, 20 from High Lords, and 20 from Lava Gouts, paired with my Faith Mercenary, which I'll show in a second, that helps us reach a higher breakpoint. What else have we got? Anything else relevant down here? Not really. Piercing, it doesn't show the Pierce added value. I think they might change that in the next patch, but just to talk a bit about that. Razor Tail piercing value is about 33%, I believe. Kuko is 50%, and the other alternative, which I think is Demon Machine, is 66%. Take that with a grain of salt. I might be wrong. Let's cover skills quickly. So combat skills, I've got 1 into smite, 1 into charge. I know you can't charge with a bow, but through my playthrough I did actually have some crowd control weapons. I had Lawbringer in one hand and I had a high res Pally shield on my right, so I'd switch and then charge through certain areas, which would be a lot easier with mobility, because one thing this build does lack throughout the whole playthrough is mobility. That's the biggest downfall for this build, I would say. Offensive auras, you're mainly going to be taking advantage of Conviction. We're going to be hitting down, minusing res on everything so we can blast them higher with elemental damage. That's going to be maxed out. Defensive auras, this is going to be the rest of your garbage. So we've got Resist Fire maxed out, same with Resist Lightning and Salvation, and I've got a few extra points left, so I put them into here to get 1 point into Vigor on switch, just to have a bit more, a bit more pace. I can run around a little bit more mobility helps in between certain areas. Now, the reason why we max these out is similar to an Auridon, that is going to bump up our synergy for Holy Fire, 18 and 6% per level, same with Holy Shock. Now, for those people wondering, no, we're not using these here, but we are getting them from our gear, which we can go straight into now. So, Dream, 15 Holy Shock Aura. Dragon gives us Holy Fire Aura of 14. Venom and Hydra, which is kind of fun. Hydra might be more relevant, do a bit more damage in the next patch, but that's what we got there for our Holy Fire damage. So, our Holy Fire damage, as well as other fire sources, such as even added fire damage, 13 to 46 on Lava Gout, that will add directly to our explosive arrows. Same with Enchant as well. So it works similar to similar to the Enchantress build that I showcased. So if you're interested, I might put a link on screen maybe if I can be bothered. But all of that fire damage directly applies to the explosive arrows or bolts. Now, Kuko is probably the best well-rounded bow to use in this, particularly in cows, which I'll showcase in a second, because the explosive, the slight AoE around a mob, if you pierce through them and there's a small pack, it can actually pierce multiple times and explode in that certain area and damage and hit the group of enemies multiple times within that small pack. So generally throughout my playthrough, I found that Kuko was generally the best option for certain areas which required a bit more kiting, a bit more of a slower pace to go through. I found that using the brand was a bit better. The 35% chance to cast 14 amp damage when struck procs a little bit more often than I thought in this build, since there is a lack of mobility. I found that the amp damage was somewhat helpful with the mercenary, helps the mercenary do a little bit more damage as well. It's definitely, I would say it's better. I found it better in certain parts of Chaos Sanctuary. I found it better in certain areas which had lower density. But higher density, I would absolutely go for Kuko. And if you don't have anything else, mate, just one of these is fine. Or even just a demon crossbow too. The 18 bone spear on striking is cool. It's fun. Does a bit more damage. Main thing on here is fires explosive arrows or bolts. But it doesn't have the pierce. So when using brand, we're only solely relying on the 33% of Razor Tail, so don't forget that. Now, another option that I found which was fun to kind of test around with was the Hellrack. Cool thing about this, we've got 2 sockets. It rolls with a native 20% increased attack speed. Jesus. Chuck another shell in there, get another 20. We've got a Nephron in there for some knockback. We've got fire damage we can apply, so that's 300%. No, 300, not 300%, Jesus. But it doesn't have pierce, doesn't have explosive arrow, so why use it? It has immolation arrow charges. So immolation arrow, unfortunately, it still has a casting delay of like 1 second, which feels like 3 hours. I'll show you in a moment, but it still directly applies all of your fire damage exactly the same as an explosive arrow. And when it does pierce, it actually leaves a fire patch on the ground. So in certain areas of AoE, it can pierce multiple times, and each time it pierces, it leaves another fire patch on the ground. So it adds up, and it does quite a cool amount of damage. I'm really excited to test this if they hopefully do change the casting delay on immolation arrow, because it's quite fun. And 150 charges is a bit generous. So I'll show the rest of my gear. I'll show mercenary, and then we'll just dive in and get some cows, boy. Lava Gout is a good option here. Anything with attack speed is fine. If you really want to min-max this build, you could go for God, what would be a good option? You could go for, I think it's safety crafted gloves with knockback with 20 IAS, maybe with res, and if you really wanted, you could try and find those that roll with charges of potentially ice arrow if you wanted to use that for as a slow if you were trying to escape certain areas. So for rings, I just got Raven Frost. You could swap one of these out for something like another proc on striking, Wisp Projector, Carrion Wind, but like Lifesteal, such as from Carrion Wind, is not as relevant since the physical damage is a lot less reliant on this build, since we're using all of the elemental damage, which makes sense. So I thought, fuck it, we'll chuck these in, get as much attack rating, dexterity, sure, cold absorb and at least one source of frozen, so that's fine. Razor Tail, this one's a must, so that gives us the pierce, which we need, dexterity, it all adds up. What else we got? We got the Dream for our Holy Shock, the Dragon, which I showed already. High Lords gives us that increased attack speed, Deadly Strike, and then boots. I just put Gore Riders. You can put other boots here if you want, but I just liked having an extra source of Crushing Blow, Deadly Strike to add on to my High Lords, and then some source of Open Wounds, which helped me out through my Hell playthrough. Now, for Mercenary, before we jump into the showcase, I've got Giant Skull, 30% increased attack speed, paired with the 45. That gives us 75, not undead, but 75 increased attack speed. I believe that's one of the higher breakpoints, the highest breakpoint for an Aqua Mercenary. I don't know. Someone leave a comment if it is. But I believe that with a Great Bow, with Fanaticism is the highest breakpoint. Maybe. I didn't check that, didn't check that. So, Fanaticism there, which helps us shoot even faster. Pretty simple. If you don't have, a Faith Aqua Mercenary here, earlier in my playthrough I found it quite beneficial to use an Act 2 Mercenary with Holy Freeze, not Holy Might. Holy Freeze. So that helps chill the mobs you can keep further away, because as I mentioned, there's the biggest downfall to this build is probably the mobility. So let's jump into cows. I'll start off with Kuko, and then we'll go through and show the other bows, see how they work. I can't remember where I put this portal, so hopefully I don't die straight off. That'd be a bit awkward, wouldn't it? Okay, we're right. So Kuko, as you can see here, we've got the Pierce, which goes straight through. As I mentioned, it's definitely a better option, a lot more superior for higher density areas such as cows. The Hydras are cool. I'm keen to see them do more damage in, the next patch or so. I have already run through here a little bit, so apologies, I kind of messed up the density a bit more. But here we go. We can see a proper pierce through there on that line. So it's safe to say, if you just have a Kuko and you want to try this build out, that is more than enough to kind of go through hell, honestly. Socket any Kuko, put a Shale in there, and you're fine. You are absolutely fine. If you can't craft any gloves with knockback, even just Cleglaws would go a long way too, if you don't have something like a Lava Gouts, or even a Demon Limb you could have on swap to pre-buff with enchant to get higher fire damage. So this here, we're using the brand now. Remember, there is no pierce on this, even though it's a bit hard to see, since all your bone spears pierce. Sometimes I forget and I think I'm piercing everything, but you're not actually. I believe a level 18 bone spear with 0 synergies only does about like 400 to 600 damage, so it does a little bit of damage. I found it easier in small areas when you're handling smaller mobs, just to get a bit more damage against enemies that are like fire and lightning resistant, because magic is, I believe it's one of the least resistant sources of damage, maybe? But it's pretty decent. I found it quite fun. I found it quite handy with knockback as well, especially on this bow. Ignore target defense. It's quite good. But I'd still think that Kuko is a bit more superior. So another option is Hellrack. So this, again, it does not have explosive arrows. It does not have pierce. So we only have 33 pierce from Razortail for this, but it does have Immolation Arrow, which unfortunately does have a bit of a delay, but it is still fun using big fire patches like that. So when it does pierce, every enemy that the Immolation Arrow pierces, it actually hits and causes another patch of fire on the ground, which does add up in areas if you can get a larger mob here. Here we go. It performs a lot better than I thought it would, actually, when I first tested it. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they fix the delay on Immolation Arrow and change that, so this might be a bit more fun to use in places like cows. Another option which I didn't show is I thought I could try and use multi-shot charges. It runs out extremely quickly, but it's actually pretty effective. It's pretty effective. It's not really usable on a regular basis because you really mow through it. I've already had to recharge this like fucking 8 times. Not even kidding. But it made me think about the immolation charges here, and so I had to search around. Big brain trying to find out, what we can really utilize. Yes, a few are probably thinking, yes, you can get arrow charges on gloves, but the roll on the gloves is significantly less than that of actual missile weapons. So you can get freezing, ice arrow, and multi-shot charges rolling on gloves themselves, but they only roll up to about 2 or 3. Cold arrow, freezing arrow charges, I've tried them all, even with higher leveled ones on Switch for bows. The cold length and the freeze length is too short to even be relevant, and as long as you're running one Raven Frost with cold damage, you're going to see some slowing and chilled effects on mobs anyway. So this is probably the best charge that you can buy from a shop, other than like the second best charge, which would be Immolation Arrow. So see if we can find a big pack, and I'll show you how multi-shot works. It's surprisingly good. I just wish we had like a larger source, or even if we got the skill from something. So fuck the mercenary, she can die, but I'll just circle these boys together and multi-shot. Because remember, all the damage is coming directly from your elemental sources, which is hitting all of these. I know there is fire damage which is not being applied for explosive arrows, unfortunately. We can't get that on this bow, but your fire damage is still being applied to the enemies directly on hit, and same with all of the Holy Shock too. So as you can see, we're down to like 1/3 left of charges. There is also a bit of a slight cast delay when things like Hydra does pop out. It's not too noticeable sometimes, but it is there. And 2-1, and we're done. So that is the end of multi-shot. So that is about all I have really to showcase of this build. It's a slow build. It's pretty good though. It's definitely better in places like Cal's. The main downfall for it is the mobility. Make sure you're going into that knowing that. I definitely recommend having something different on Switch just to have that charge around in certain areas. That goes a huge way, particularly if you want to do a Hell playthrough. So even just 2 skills just to get that charge is going to help you significantly. Kuko is going to be your best option to really kind of aim for, really, playing this. But that is about it for the Ranger Paladin. So I think I'm going to do this type of video in the future. I know I've done like the simple showcases in the past where there's no mic or anything, and just recording a simple showcase. It's not to say I might still do those in the future, but I prefer talking a bit more and explaining a bit more and sharing more about these niche builds and talking a bit about the options and since they are quirky, I just enjoy talking a bit about the kind of effort and different things and techniques that I've tried kind of going through it. But that's about it really. Maybe next time I might end up having a druid showcase for you, or maybe another barbarian one. I definitely have a few in the works already. But without further ado, I'll probably just end the video here. But if you haven't already checked out my Twitch, I stream there most days I suppose, but I think the video was long enough. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for the support. Leave a like if you want. I don't care. Leave a dislike if you want. See you guys.